So now let's complete this set of drawings by making our L3. The easiest way to do this is to copy our existing L2 drawing. So I've right-clicked on the L2 tab, move for copy, select L2, create a copy. It will call this L2 bracket 2. I'll click and drag that icon in the tabs menu and just to reposition it past L2, and I'll call this one L3. And that's what we're looking at right now is L3. Even though it's identical to L2, they're two different drawings. So from here, I need to actually create the L3 drawing. I'm going to do this by moving all of my references that I have on this sectional view. And I'm going to pull back up the viewport so I can see it. I don't want this viewport, so I'll actually delete it. If you take a look at the sectional views, the actual scale is 3 inch equals 1 foot, which is a 1 to 4 scale. So I'm going to double click inside the viewport and type in Z, enter 1 over 4 XP. That's the correct scale. Now you can see it's significantly larger than the opening that I have here. I'm going to double click outside the viewport, stretch the viewport over, and reposition the inside diagram so it's placed here. The viewport is a bit long, so I'll make that a bit shorter. There we go. Now you can see the dimensions are huge. That's because those dimensions were actually designed for another viewport scale, in our case, 1/2 inch. So I want to turn this viewport information off while I'm inside the viewport. So I've double clicked inside the viewport. There's my XY axis. I'm going to go into my layer menu and turn the dim 24 off or freeze it in that viewport so it's no longer visible. It's the dim 4 that I'm going to be using in this viewport. Let's try to dimension from this viewport. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I'm in the correct layer. So I'm going to switch to dim 4. And then I also have to make it. I don't have that one. I've got dim 24. I've got dim X2. So I'm going to click on the Dimension Style Manager, start with dim 24, create a new one. We're going to call this one dim 4. Select continue. The only number we're changing is right here in the Fit tab. That number has to read 4. That's why we're using the system. 3 inch equals 1 foot or 1 to 4. That's the numbering system we have to be able to identify and understand. So there we have 4. We're going to select that current, close this. And now right in this viewport, I'm going to dimension it. I caution against it, but at this point, you need to practice some of these new techniques. So I'm going to click on linear. There's my first point, my second point, and move that up. There's my 6.5 inch dimension. Select dimension, continue. Click the other side of the post. Great. Select dimension, base point. Type in S and enter for select. Click on the first line of the first dimension. Move to the second point and press enter. There is our linear dimensions. The dimensions on the right are slightly smaller, so I may want to zoom in on it. I have to be careful. I can't zoom in right now because I'll be zooming in the viewport. I want to zoom in on the paper. Double click outside the viewport. I'm still in the command, so it's not letting me. I'm going to press escape first. Now double click outside the viewport. Zoom in on the viewport. Double click inside the viewport. That's the technique we're going to be using. Now I'm ready to dimension all the values to the right. Linear. Let's start with the peak to the sloped edge, and that's where I want to have that first dimension. Now click on dimension, continue, and it's right at the point where it meets the top of the cap, and the next dimension is at the base of the cap. Press enter, and I will select dimension baseline. Type in S and enter to pick the extension line of the first dimension and click the endpoint. There's my 4 inch. Now I've got a couple of small ones in here. Let's put those in. Linear. I've noted it as a 1/4 inch. I've indicated it as an 1/8 inch. Let's correct that. I can do that right in that viewport using stretch. And again, this is something we have to be very careful what we're picking in order to make this work right. This will take some skill. I'm going to stretch a window right across there So where did I pick? Just above that mortar line, and I'm going to go just below it. Press enter. Click anywhere off the drawing and type in 0, minus 0.125. 0.125 is 1/8 of an inch. And now it's 1/4 inch. Everything stretched correctly. What about our hatching? It didn't. So we're going to select it and move it down. Select it and move it down. Now we'll dimension the other small bits that are here. They're very, very small in relationship to the overall size of things. That's at 1/4 of an inch. Select dimension, continue. That's our 1/2 inch. That's our other 1/4 inch. And then we have an overall dimension of 1. So dimension, baseline, S, enter. Select the outer edge, inner edge, press enter, double click outside our viewport. And there we have the base of the cap. Now we've got the other two details, which are the upper and the lower bracket. I can take this viewport and manipulate it, or create another viewport. It doesn't matter. I'm going to copy this viewport over, and I'll find the bracket. So I double clicked inside, press and hold the wheel. It's the same scale, so I'm not manipulating anything in terms of scale. Double click outside the viewport, click on the viewport, resize the viewport. You can see we're using multiple techniques here. Get it the right size. There we go. If I want to zoom in on that, remember I have to double click outside first. The viewport selected, press escape. Double click outside the viewport. Now zoom in, roll your wheel, zoom in. Now I'm ready to dimension in the viewport. Double click inside the viewport. It's the same scale as the other viewport. I don't have to change anything. Linear, let's start at the top and work our way down. So there's the top of the bracket. This is a guess where this point is. It's really not important. So it may or may not read correctly. It's off by a 1/16. That's okay. Now I'm going to click on dimension, continue. And this is to the top of the bolt, the thickness of the bolt, the base of the plate. Now I'm going to do the overall here. So dimension, baseline, S, and enter to pick the top of that dimension. Go down to the bottom. There's my 4-inch. Now arguably this is all interfering with the drawing. I can leave it as is, as it printed out. The print's in color, so it comes out nicely. If I don't like this, I can move it all. So I select move, and I click on all the dimensions. Now I'm in the viewport, so I can't use crossing because I'll actually pick up the brickwork. So I've selected everything, press enter. I'm going to click off my drawing. Now make sure you're not snapping onto anything. Off my drawing and slide that up. And I can place that off of all the items in here. And then I'm going to just slide my viewport over a bit so it displays nicely. So it's different from the PDF, just to show you some variance and how it actually looks. And this is something that you can play with or practice with and find out what the best practices are for you or for your office. Now let's make the second one. This one's simple. I can copy the viewport straight down, just giving myself a little bit of room for the title reference. Now I'm going to slide that bolt up, double click outside, roll my wheel, zoom in on the page, double click inside. I could have copied those sets of dimensions. I will do my lower linear dimensions first. There's my 4-inch. Good. Dimension, continue. 1/4 inch. 2 1/4. Enter. Do the same. Linear. Let's go from above down. So there's my 1/4 inch. Dimension, continue. 2 1/4. And then my final set in here. Linear. There's my 1 1/8. And continue on downwards. There's my 1/2. There's my 7/8. Once again, I can leave it there or move it down. Now let's get our information about the titles in place. I can see that I have a couple of challenges here only because of where these two are interfering, the two viewports. So I'm going to move the top one down a bit, and that will give me enough room to put in the text. The upper one, just going to slide that up a bit and move the viewport up a bit so we have some more space. And I can remember I can move entire viewports just by using the move command. Good. So then I'm going to move my lower title reference up below that drawing. Now each one of these has a box, so I can leave the viewports on if I want and use that as part of the box, or what I can do is draw a box over top of it. Now, why is that significant? When you're using boxes to refer to drawings, these title bubbles should be positioned in more or less the exact same place, so it looks very consistent. This is my stone cap detail. Its scale is 3-inch. So let's change that 1/2 inch to a 3. And now I'm going to copy what I just edited from the corner of this viewport to the corner of that viewport to the corner of that viewport. See how neatly they're aligned? That's what really makes it look professional, when you can have that consistency in your views and in your drawings. So this is 1, 2, and 3. They're all L3. This is the top support detail. Top support detail. And the other one is the bottom support detail. Bottom support detail. The scales are all the same. The length of the title line is slightly long in a couple of views. I can quickly adjust those. And the drawings are complete. So to make multiple viewports, it doesn't take a lot. Now if I leave these in the viewport and I go to plot this or print this all as a mass published document, I can only have the viewports on or off. I can't have them both. So in order to make sure that they're on in the correct pages, I'm going to create boxes around each of these. So I'm in the title block layer, and I will create a box around each one of these items. So now when I turn off the viewport, they stay on. And when I move to L2, there's my box for the viewport of the finial, where there's no viewport shown here. On the section, there's my L1. We're ready to plot. This is the last step. First, save your drawing. File, save as. If you haven't done so already, I already have that one. In less than 10, we're going to call this one L1 Final. Select Save. So now that we've saved this document, we're ready to plot it. Typically when you plot, you may plot a page at a time. So if I click on File, Plot, this allows me to plot out the current tab. Up in the upper left-hand corner, it'll actually identify which tab is current or whether model space is on. And this is a single page plot. However, I want to plot multiple pages at one time. So I'll click on File, but this time instead of going to Plot, I'm going to click on Publish. This menu allows me to publish or plot multiple pages into a single PDF. I have already here it preset to DWG to PDF. I'm going to remove the files I don't want. Now this includes the DWG file as well as any tabs that are in this drawing. I don't want the DWG file, so I click on it, and right above this menu there is an icon that has a minus sign and a plus sign. I'm going to click on the minus sign to remove it from this plot selection. The last one on here was the layout tab that came with the program. We never removed it, so I want to remove that as well. Now with these three identified in the window, it will plot these particular files into a single PDF. We don't need to include a date stamp or anything like that at this time. I'm going to click on the word Publish, and it's going to ask me, where do I want to place this? So I'm going to place it with the rest of the CAD-Prof for landscape, and in here I'm going to call it L1 Final PDF. You'll notice I already have one there. That's okay, I'll simply overwrite it. It'll tell me that I'm actually overwriting the file, and do I want to continue? Yes, I do. It will then ask me if I want to keep the current list of sheets. That's the pages that I've identified here. I almost every single time select no because it changes from project to project. And even the existing project, if I have extra sheets on it, I don't want to have to add more sheets to it. I want all the sheets present and then remove those that I don't want. So it goes through the process, which is pretty quick. It's plotted every single page. Now let's take a look at what it's actually plotted. I'm going to open up my Adobe Acrobat Reader, click on my L1 Final, and this is what we have. So each of the pages is listed here, and it's under a single PDF file. It's ready for attachment to an email or off to the printers. But notice it's in color. What if I don't want it in color? I want it in monochrome. I need to first set the default setting and apply it to all the layouts. So I'm going to go into File. This time select Plot, not Publish. And here under the plot style where it says None, that takes on the colors of the layers. I want to go into here and select Grayscale. And then at the bottom of this menu, click on Apply to Layout. That's all I need to do. Once this is done, close the menu. Now when I publish this document, it'll take on those properties. File, Publish. I'm going to give it a different name. Notice all the files have been repopulated here. This is really what I want because if I add new tabs to it, they'll automatically appear in this menu. I'm going to click on the DWG file and remove that. I'll click on the Extra Layout tab and remove that. And now I'll select Publish. I'm going to give it a different name. So I'll go into my desktop, and there's our project file. And here I'm going to call it Complete Set. Click on Select. Once again, it's going to ask me for the current list of sheets to be saved. No, I don't want to save them. And it's going through the plotting process. That's what this menu is identifying. Now let's take a look at what we've done. I'm opening up my Adobe Acrobat. I'll open up the last project that I have. It's on my desktop. And this is the one for landscape. And there's my complete set. And you can see how now they're all in grayscale. Okay. So I'm going to save this file once again. Now I'll have the new settings of plotting grayscale to the layout pages. File save. It'll just overwrite the last saved file. And we've completed our 10-part lesson series. Well, thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this series. If you have any comments or want to make some suggestions on improving the program, I'd be more than happy to hear it. Just log on to my webpage, and in the comments section, please identify what you thought about the program as well as where you think it can improve. I can always use the feedback in a constructive way. Thank you for your time. Bye now.